Hello. Recently, I went to the fabric store to buy fabric for this project, and I ran across some fabric that I had no plan for but couldn't leave behind. In fact, I did leave it behind. I left the fabric store without it, and then for 3 days,
all I thought about was buying it.
I did it. Here are my thoughts. Something about this screams,
it should be a tennis skirt.
So I decided to make a tennis skirt. So I'm following Vintage Thirsty's tutorial right here. And step 1 is to measure your waist and then your hips and then the distance between them. And then take your waist measurements and times it by 3. And that'll be the length of your skirt. Okay, so here's our gargantuan piece of fabric. It is 90 inches.
90 inches?
Then I measured how long I wanted the skirt to be and moved on to cutting.
Hi! Can you even see me? I've decided to go with about 16 inches for the length of this skirt. I just want to make sure that I give myself enough room for this not being perfectly straight.
This is where I made the biggest mistake in the project. I probably should have weighed down this fabric that it didn't slide around. Also, I realized halfway through cutting this that this was way shorter than I wanted it to be, but instead of just cutting a new piece of fabric, I decided to just make it longer on one end and figure it out when I was hemming it, because that totally makes sense, right? The next step is to divide your waist by the number of pleats that you want. In the video, she goes with 16 pleats. Since I have
no frame of reference
for what that's gonna look like, I said,
great.
Which means that I need to cut every 1.87 inches. Again, that is me measuring my waist, which would be 30 inches divided by the number of pleats I wanted, which was 16, to get me 1.78 or roughly 1.8 for every width of the pleat. You have made all of those snips in your fabric. It is time to move on to making your pleats. So you just want the first and third snip to press together and then press the rest of that fabric to the left and then move on to the next set of 3 and continue to do that all the way down. This was especially difficult for me with how slippery this fabric was, but by the time I was finished, I was so pleased with how it was looking. This is our skirt right now. When I look at it, I cry. I love it so much. Basically, the next thing that we need to do in our tutorial is kind of accommodate for your hip. So you sew down the pleats along these straight lines until it reaches your hip measurements. Basically, you're making this seam at the top of the skirt. For me, I think that that's 9 inches. I'm gonna go remeasure and make sure that the distance between my waist and my hip is
9 inches.
So that it hits perfectly. And then I'm going to mark that on each of these pleats. Hi, it's Editing Beauty. This is definitely the second biggest mistake I made in this project, and it's because I was measuring my natural hip line, which is lower than what you would assume it is. You know, it should be the widest part of your hips. But that was a little low for this skirt, and it turned out looking really bad. So I would recommend measuring that distance a little bit shorter than your natural hip line so that it looks better and fits your curves better. So after you have measured how long you want that seam to be and marked that on your fabric, you're going to want to accommodate for the fact that your hips are curvy. And to do this, you need to subtract your hip minus your waist and then divide that number by the amount of pleats that you have. After you have done that little bit of math, you are going to move your pleats off of their pleat line exactly that much. So for me, I was moving my pleats about 1/2 inch, and it's really more easy to just watch me do this than it is for me to explain it. Kind of just see where it is and then push it over 1/2 inch and then pin it down there. Okay, so now that all of my pleats are pinned in place and have been ironed down, the next step is to sew down the pleats. So I'm going to sew down the top part first and then straight stitch down to where each of the pins are. He hasn't technically said to sew down all of the pleats just across the top like normal, but this fabric, much as I love it, is it's moving a lot. So I'm gonna go ahead and sew those down and just
hope for the best.
Let's do our best. Hello. I just finished top stitching down some of the pleats, as you can see. Honestly, the fact that I am a very amateur seamstress is definitely showing. These are not the same width.
Even though I measured them.
They definitely do not hit at the same place down there. And this fabric is cute, but man, is it difficult. I'm not professional enough to know how to deal with this. But, you know, even though I'm discouraged and just a few seconds ago I accidentally
Cut a hole in this?
we're gonna keep going. The next step is to add a zipper, so let's head to Joann's. And we're back. Let's get to the zipper. Before you can insert your zipper, you're going to want to sew up the back of your skirt till the zipper would start. So mark on your fabric where the zipper ends on the back and then sew up that seam on the back side. Then it was time for me to add the zipper. I've seen a few different ways to do this online, but the way that Vintage Thirsty does it in her video is basically just top stitch it down one side and then cross over at the bottom and then sew up the other side. I was feeling a bit discouraged this day, so I feel like my work was definitely more messy than it should have been, and I definitely should have taken more care with the zippers. So take your time and keep your head up. It'll be fine. Okay, she has a zipper. This is...
It's not looking great.
My confidence in this garment is like -12. It's a combination of the fabric choice and my skills. I think it's just worth noting here that at this point in the process I was clearly discouraged, but really the only thing that was wrong with the skirt so far is that I had sewn the pleat lines down too long so they hit on a weird spot on my body. Once I fixed that, it really does look cute. So I think just as an encouragement, if you're learning something new, if you're a beginning novice seamstress, mistakes can feel like the end of the world, but this is how we learn and how we grow, so we can do it. Next, we're going to make a waistband. To make the waistband, I measured the width of the skirt, and then I took that measurement. I forgot to mention this, but you're actually going to want to take the measurement of the skirt and then add about 2 inches so that you can have a place to add a button or a clasp at the end if you want one. And I cut a panel that was about 16 inches long and 3 inches wide, and make sure to cut that on the fold. I ended up actually cutting out 2 of these panels and zigzag stitching them together to prevent fraying and also to hopefully strengthen the waistband a little bit. I doubt it did that much, but you know, I'm an amateur seamstress, and so I did what I thought would work. Then it was time to attach the waistband. So with the right sides facing together, I pinned the waistband to the top of the skirt so that when I flipped it over, it would have a nice, lovely seam. So I'm at the end. You're just going to fold this over and then sew here and back down it to make it a waistband, if that made sense. Pro tip, which I don't know if you can tell in this shot, but I actually sewed this down backwards the first time. So make sure that when you sew this down, you're going to want to flip it inside out. And when you flip it inside out, you want your fabric to fold on the back of your skirt so that you can sew down the waistband so that it folds correctly. Then to finish off that day, I pinned down the waistband and sewed it down on this line. Hello. I was not feeling good about the skirt yesterday, and that's because it currently looks like this. It's not cute. That's not it. But I realized the problem. I need to take the hip line, this sewed down, and move it up. Right now, it's hitting me too low. So game plan for today, we're going to hem the skirt
Carefully.
and then we are going to seam rip these till they all measure about 4 inches, because that is where I would like the hips to start poofing out. And then all we have to do is add the hook and eye here and we should be done. So let's get started. The first thing I did that day was hem the skirt, which I will get back to later, but just remember that I did not cut this fabric in a straight line, and I definitely just blocked that out when I was hemming this. I just hemmed it like normal, folding it over about 1 inch and then folding it into itself so that there were no raw edges. And then it was time to fix the hip line. So I moved on to marking about 3.5 inches on all of those seams so that I could seam rip back up to 3.5 inches. It's time to
Seam rip.
This is gonna take a while. 1 down, a billion more to go. Good morning. Yesterday, I finished making the pleats the right size, so these are all 3.5 inches, and I seam ripped this lovely top.
What is this called?
Waistband. I seam ripped the waistband. So all we have to do today to finish is add the hook and eyes I bought to the little clasp here, and then we'll be done. Let's get to it. I began this day by attempting to do the waistband with a little bit more care than I had the first time. I'm not completely sure that I did much better, but I wanted to try again, so I did. Then it was time to add the little hook and eyes that I had bought from Joann's. If you are a professional, please look away. I just hand sewed these down to the best of my ability, which, as someone who has never hand sewn these down to anything, was not great. So pro tips appreciated. I did my best. Hi, it's me. I realized after adding both of these,
In not a very professional way.
can you tell? I did these backwards so that the fabric has to flip in order to clip, and it doesn't. So I'm gonna have to undo both of these, redo them on the other side, and hope that they work. Okay. Hi. So here's the skirt. Here she is. Now, I could lie and be like,
This is perfect. I'm gonna wear it all the time. I love it so much.
but honestly, this YouTube channel is for me to teach myself how to sew and to learn how to sew. And when you're learning something new, you make a lot of mistakes because you just don't know what you don't know. And
I didn't know a lot coming into this project.
first of all, the slickness of this fabric was really difficult to work with. Also, I mean, we all knew the hem was gonna be weird, but like, the back is a good 2 inches, probably shorter than the front. And if I had been a more experienced seamstress, I might have known that, you know, a curvy cut at the beginning would offset the entire project. But since I just started a month ago, I had no idea that it would completely off track the whole skirt. This project was not my favorite. It was really difficult to do as someone who doesn't have as much experience, and it did not turn out how I was hoping. However, I learned a lot, and that's the point for me as I'm learning how to sew and making new things. Even though this is not this tennis skirt that I had envisioned personally, I'm really happy with it because this means that I can start over. I could make a tennis skirt now and know what I need to do and what fabric I need to work with and how to get started. So I'm actually really content and happy with this project, even though it's not perfect. And that's what learning is. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys next time you're feeling crafty. Bye!